All right, here we go. Let's get started on this. Welcome again. This is really going to be talking through how the aid process works here so that you can get a sense of what steps to take, what are the next steps, did you miss a step, do you have everything in, and just to get a good feeling of financial aid. And I know a lot of people get nervous when they hear good feelings about financial aid, but I want to make sure you have all the information you have, and we'll make sure we get Olivia to chime in on all the scholarship information. So let's just jump right in to our, maybe our next slide, if it will move for me. Here we go, maybe. Perfect. All right, so we're going to talk about our forms and requirements. We're going to go over common terms, and there's so many terms when it comes to financial aid, but we're going to hit, these are really the big three that we need to hit. We'll talk about our different award types, scholarships, grants, loans, work programs, all of those different components that make up an aid package. We'll talk about how you hear, and then importantly, the special circumstances that that everybody is experiencing with the pandemic. We're finding more and more of our families are having challenges that they've never had before, whether it's financially, medically, whatever. We'll talk about some of those options. And then if we have time for some questions, if not, fill them in, get them in on the chat, and we'll get them answered. So let's talk forms and requirements. FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. This is the primary financial aid form that you need to complete when looking for any aid source here at Randolph-Macon. FAFSA.gov is the website where you can go ahead and file that. I've got our Title IV school code there, that 3733. As long as you list us with that school code, we will get the information straight from the federal government. And we'd like to have it in here by the 1st of February. It has been open since October 1. It always opens nice and early, but let's get it in here by the 1st of February so we make sure we have it to get that aid package done to you in a timely fashion. So when you're doing your FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid, both the parent and the student are going to need what is known as an FSA ID, which stands for Federal Student Aid ID. And this is going to be your electronic signature when you complete the FAFSA. Both the student and the parent need one. You need separate email addresses, you need separate signatures. So it's just important that if you haven't filed your form, go on out. I've got the website here, the FSAID.ed.gov website, where you can request that and get that all set up so that when you fill out your FAFSA, you both have your IDs. You can electronically sign the application, and it moves things along much more quickly. And then you'll need that FSA ID again in the future when doing any loan paperwork or any other transmissions with the Department of Ed. For families that have multiple students in college, or you may have filed a FAFSA for another sibling, parents only need to have one so they can use it for both students, regardless of where they're attending. So that's just something to keep in mind. The FAFSA for the 21-22 school year, the academic period, is based on the 2019 tax data. So most everybody filed their 2019 tax data almost a year ago. So everyone should have that completed. You don't have to wait for the 2020 tax data to be filed. You should have everything done and on file unless you had an extension. But most extensions were finalized in the October-November timeframe. So I'm hopeful that everybody's able to use their 2019 tax data. When you're completing your FAFSA, you're able to actually link your FAFSA right to the IRS and use the IRS data retrieval tool, and it links you right over there. You put in your basic information, your name as a parent, or if the student filed a tax return, their name, what type of tax return you're filed, and then you give the permission to transfer the data over to the FAFSA, and it will move that information for you so that you don't have to key it in for your student and for yourself. Makes the process quite simple, and anything that simplifies the process is a good thing. The other thing I want to caution you on is when you're completing the FAFSA, make sure you've got the right Social Security number. When we're filling it out, it's the student name and the student Social Security number. I've been working with 2 families recently where parents put their Social Security number in, and so we've had to actually have the student refile a brand new FAFSA just to get that information corrected. So it's important that Social Security numbers are accurate. Once you've electronically signed, got all your tax data in, all the correct demographic information, that FAFSA gets submitted to the federal processor, and Randolph-Macon will get it within 72 hours. We have been loading FAFSAs since the 10th of October, and I'm so excited when I get excited over FAFSA receipts. So I like to see them come in. So if you're concerned about timeliness, or am I late, or do I need to do anything more, go ahead and get it submitted now. We'll have it within 72 hours, which is in plenty of time. So what happens when you get your FAFSA done? It's going to give you some very important information. It's going to give us important information about how we can calculate a financial aid package. So let's talk about these terms. The expected family contribution being one of the primary things that any school is going to look at, and we look at it, and it's an important component of a financial aid package. It's determined based on the information that's submitted on your FAFSA, so the demographic information, members of the household, how many people are in college, how many total family members in the household. It looks at income information, savings, discretionary income, assets, and what FAFSA does is actually gives us what is called this expected family contribution, which is the minimum amount a family is expected to contribute to education. So that is a primary tool in creating your financial aid package. The expected family contribution has 2 components. So remember, on a FAFSA, we're putting in both parental and student information. Student contribution typically lower because a student doesn't work as many hours as parents do. They're in school typically. Any assets they have or savings for college, those are reported. So that would make up their contribution. Parents, our contribution is made up out of our discretionary income, assets that we've reported. You do not report your family, your household, your primary household, so your home is not reported. And then it also takes into account what we can borrow as parents. So it just is a combination of all of those 3 things for us, and then we add in that student information as well. And we get 1 total expected family contribution. After expected family contribution, the important thing to notice and to talk about is cost of attendance. And the cost of attendance is the estimated amount it will cost the student to go to school for a full academic year. And the cost of attendance is the cost, and I want to make sure you're aware of this before any financial aid is considered. So it's that big number you see that most schools publicize on their websites. It'll be in their financial aid award letters. But remember, it's the composite of all of the different elements, and it's before financial aid. So we'll take a look at what that includes. Actual costs are in the cost of attendance, and this is tuition. So the cost of instruction or attending classes, room for living on campus. If your student's going to choose to live on campus, it does include a room cost. Board, which is our way of saying meal plan. So you'll have a room and board cost, and then any required fees that are for the student. So our comprehensive fee will be included. It also includes estimated costs. So not only is there the cost of instruction, but students need books when they're in school, and we will include an estimation of what books may cost for the year. But of course, it's going to depend on what classes a student takes. So it's our best estimate of what a year could cost in books. Personal expenses, transportation. Is your student commuting from home? Are they commuting from a dorm on campus or residence hall? Their cost of transportation might be slightly different. Personal expenses, they can vary from student to student depending on how a student lives while they're on campus. So these are just things to keep in mind, actual costs versus estimated costs. And let's go. What I've got here is our current cost of attendance for the 21-22 aid year. And remember, I'm going to caution you on this again. This is before financial aid. So yes, it is a big number, but it is before any financial aid. So our tuition and fees for 21-22 is the $45,150. Room is $72.60, and that's a standard double residence hall. Board plan, that's our standard board plan of 19 meals a week. Books, we're saying, could average about $1,000 a year. Of course, depends on what courses your student takes. Personal expenses and transportation. Again, depending on how the student is living, do they reside on campus? Are they commuting? And transportation, the same thing. So cost of attendance can vary depending on what criteria your student is choosing. So let's see. How do we calculate financial need? And financial need is the important thing. So everyone always says financial aid is calculated. It's confusing. It's a very complex formula. It really isn't. What we're looking at when we're calculating a financial aid package is we're simply taking the cost of attendance. So remember that big number, tuition fees, room, board, books, personal transportation, that big cost of attendance, and then we're going to subtract out that expected family contribution that was calculated by the Department of Education based on what you submitted on the FAFSA. The difference between those two is your financial need, and that is the number that we're looking at to say, all right, this is this particular family's financial need. So what do we have and what can we offer to meet that financial need? And I did put this together in numbers so that you could see it with our true costs. Now, so here's the full cost of attendance at 6678. I put in an expected family contribution of $25,000, and that expected family contribution is just there for my ease. I didn't base it on anybody's income or assets or anything. Basically 25,000 is an even number and easy for math. So then you can see this family and this hypothetical family's financial need is just over 35,000. And that is the number that we're going to look at with all of the financial resources that we have to say, how can we make Randolph-Macon affordable for you? So Olivia, you want to talk on this one?
Sure, happy to jump in. Thanks so much, Julie. I think you do such a thorough job and really break it down, and it's helpful for me to see it time and time again too. So appreciate all of your details. Yeah, so this slide I think is helpful in a number of ways. You can see the first bullet point there is the number that Julie was explaining earlier as the total cost that we can anticipate with estimated costs, but also actual costs. And then when we factor in what Julie's going to tell you a little bit about later on is the average financial aid package, our price can come down considerably for a lot of our students and families. And so I think if you take anything away from our presentation this evening, it's don't let those large numbers scare you, but go through the process and trust the process, and trust Julie and her staff to help you understand how you can make your college options affordable for you and your family. We are really excited at Randolph-Macon that over 95% of our students do receive some form of aid, and Julie's going to talk about that as well. We have a really strong commitment and investment in institutional grants and scholarships, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. But before I do, I think it's important to think about when you're looking at cost, that Randolph-Macon is very intentional about talking about these things in a 4-year time span. And not all colleges and universities will do that. So that's something you want to be mindful of as you're going about your college options. But Randolph-Macon is so intentional about that, that we do have a 4-year degree guarantee. So you actually sign with our provost and other members of our academic team, sometimes with the president of the college and other cabinet members, what we call our 4-year degree guarantee. And that says in writing that the college pledges to you as a student and a family that we will do everything in our power to make sure that you are on track to graduate in 4 years or fewer. Otherwise, Randolph-Macon will pay the extra tuition costs for you to receive your diploma. And I think, just making sure that you obviously are investing time and resources into this decision and this opportunity to pursue your education. And Randolph-Macon wants to respect that. And so we really are committed to that 4-year degree experience.
All right, so let's talk. Once we've talked about that, thanks Olivia so much for going through that. What are we talking about then when it comes to affordability and costs? So the expected family contribution is the expectation that the family is going to cover that, and that's their responsibility. Of course, we'll talk going through this a bit more, that there's options for covering the expected family contribution. And one of the things, and I had this conversation with a family earlier today, actually, of why are parents required to help with education? And it's really been the expectation of the Department of Education and the federal government when looking at different aid programs and aid options, that there is the expectation that families do help students and help them with their undergraduate education. So they are considered dependent, and that would mean dependent on a parent, a custodial parent, until the age of 24. Once they move on to graduate study, that would make them independent, or once they're greater than the age of 24. But regardless of whether your students claimed on your tax return or not, they are considered dependent until the age of 24. So I just want to reinforce that so that you're not surprised, and understand that we're looking at that financial need, and we're going to do our best to meet that need and make Randolph-Macon an affordable option for you. So I'll do a little bit on scholarships, and then I'll let Olivia jump in again and really talk a bit more about our particular scholarships. Scholarships, free money. You always want as much free money as possible at any institution. And as Olivia shared, the college has invested significantly in our grant and scholarship programs. And I will say currently well over $38 million invested in grants and scholarships for our students. So we're trying very hard to make this an affordable option. Scholarship opportunities typically not based on financial needs, so it doesn't matter what you make, you're considered for those based on talent or academic components. They typically, and here they do, require full-time enrollment. Full-time enrollment for us is 12 credits a semester. They do have a cumulative grade point average for renewal, but again, free money, and they don't have to be repaid. So that's always important to remember. So let's go on. Olivia, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yes, thanks for that introduction. I think that's perfect. And the one thing I really want you to take away about Randolph-Macon scholarships is that all of our applicants are automatically considered for our merit-based scholarship opportunities with their application to Randolph-Macon. So there's no additional application or essay or piece of paper or box you have to check when you apply to Randolph-Macon. With your admissions review, you're simultaneously being considered for one of these 3 merit-based scholarships that you see on the screen. So I'll go through them just to give you a little bit more detail, but we do have our Dean's Award Scholarship, and you can see the range there that has. And again, these, like Julie said, the scholarship placements are based on merit. So really about the strength of your academic schedule that you're taking as a student in high school. That would include advanced placement, international baccalaureate classes, dual enrollment courses, honors, advanced. If you have access to those and you're working and achieving at that level, those would be taken into consideration here. If you have leadership roles, if you are dedicated to a certain aspect in your community or in maybe your school environment, hearing about those things are really important. And I think it's easy for students to not brag about themselves, but really it's important to do so on the application, because when it comes to merit scholarships, it can be really helpful for the committee to see that. So in addition to our Dean's Award, you have our Trustees Award, and those students are invited for an interview and for the opportunity to increase their scholarship. And then we have our Presidential Award, and those students are also invited for an interview, but you can see that the range for their additional monies is obviously up to full tuition. So the great thing too is that when you receive your acceptance letter, it tells you in writing which one of these scholarships you would be eligible to receive should you choose to enroll at Randolph-Macon. And then it also tells you the dollar amount. So you get that merit-based scholarship information with your acceptance letter, which is really awesome. And then Julie and her team a little bit later down the line will use this information as they're building your comprehensive financial aid package. And so our office is happy to answer questions about merit-based scholarships because it takes place in your admissions process. But this information is also available on our website too for you to take a look at.
Great, thank you so much. All right, let's move on to our next topic here. And we'll look at grants. Grants, another form of free money. So scholarships, free money, grants are free money. And these can be from state, federal, or institutional resources. I did put on here that they're based on financial need, and then I also included VTAG on here, which isn't based on financial need. So not trying to confuse you, but I just was trying to consolidate all the grant information. The two big federal grant programs are the federal Pell Grant Program and the federal SEOG. So the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant is what that is. Both federal sources. To get the SEOG, you have to be a Pell Grant recipient. And Pell Grant recipients typically, and the new amounts aren't out yet for 21-22, typically expected family contributions are in the $6,000 and lower range to be considered for Pell Grants. The Virginia TAG grant is something that all students who are residents of Virginia can receive. This year, the award is just over $3,500 for our students, and we will include that as long as you meet the residency requirements. Then we have institutional grants, which would be Randolph-Macon grants. And then some things just to keep in mind that sometimes for some of the Pell Grants or SEOGs, the awards may change from year to year if your financial need changes significantly. Randolph-Macon does attempt to maintain the same level of funding year to year, assuming a same financial need year to year. So we're committed not only to 1 year, but to 4 years of affordability. And that's something to keep in mind is you want to make sure we're projecting out. This isn't just a 1-year degree, it's a 4-year degree. And we want to make sure that your student not only enrolls in Randolph-Macon, but graduates from Randolph-Macon. And again, grants like scholarships, free money, and you want as much free money as you possibly can get. So these are great resources as well. In our aid package, we'll also talk and include any sort of loan opportunities that your student is eligible for. We won't include any parent loans or any private loans. We'll talk about those a little bit here. And we have all sorts of information out on our website about those two different options. But what we will include is the student loan opportunities. And loans are just sources of financial aid. I know some families say they're not aid. They can be aid. It's really, we're just including, these are resources there if the student wants to take them. Loans are paid back with interest. Some require financial needs, so it does matter what that expected family contribution is, and some don't require financial need. So it just depends on what you're eligible for. The two big loan programs for students through the feds are the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. And we're at historically low interest rates right now. 2.75 in all my years in financial aid, and I've been in financial aid forever, it seems like. I have never had a 2.75 interest rate until this year, which is great opportunity for students. The subsidized is really a great opportunity because there is no interest on a subsidized loan. It has what's called an interest subsidy. So while the student is in school and for their first 6 months of grace period, there is no interest accruing on that loan, which is good. Unsubsidized, the interest does begin accruing typically upon disbursement. Right now with the pandemic and everything that's going on, the Fed has actually extended out, so there's no interest on any loans, subsidized or unsubsidized, accruing through January 31st. And we're expecting that to be extended past the 1st of February, but we're still waiting for that to see how long that's going to go. So those loans will include in the aid package. We'll send you information about private alternative loans. And remember, I mentioned a few slides ago that the expected family contribution is the responsibility of the parent. So what we'll say is these are opportunities for either students or parents to borrow these private loans. They're all educationally based to help cover that expected family contribution. So the difference between the cost of attendance and the financial aid. So if you don't happen to have savings, which not everybody does, and that's fine. Some families use savings, some families use private loans, a combination, payment plans. It's really what works best for the family. But we have a site where you can go and compare all the different private loans, see which one best fits your family, and then apply for those. And see, they typically have an interest rate of a prime plus or a LIBOR plus, depending on the strength of the cosigner. The Federal Direct Plus loan is also a federal loan for parents of undergraduate students. So it's a parent loan for undergraduate students. Interest rate, again, 5.3, lowest I have seen this in my time in aid. So this is also another loan that parents can take, cost of attendance minus financial aid, to help meet those educational costs. And right now our families are pretty split, 50-50 for those that do borrow. About half of them take private loans, the other half take plus loans. So it's really just a family preference of what they might like to use. But we can always help you talk through those options and find the best opportunity for you. All right. And let's go on to talk about employment. Federal work study, college work study, 2 different employment options that are available here at Randolph-Macon. So I get asked all the time, I want my student to work. You know, and as a parent of a college age student, I like him to work too, because then he's not asking me for money. He's earning it himself. And then he tends to budget a little better, just from a personal experience. I'll throw that out there. But federal work study is a need-based federal work program that just is funded by the Fed. So we get an allocation of federal work study dollars every year. And in turn, students who meet the criteria for federal work study are able to work on campus. For those that don't qualify for federal work study, we have our own college work study program. Doesn't require any financial need, doesn't matter what your family makes. Students can still work on campus. Typically, students working 8 to 10 hours a week, they get paid directly for any hours that they're working. So they have that income, helps them with their personal expenses or whatever incidental costs they have while they're here. And one of the great things that we've done is we've partnered and coordinated our federal work study and our college work study program with our Edge Career Center to assist students in, first of all, finding employment. And then it's developing their career planning program, it's resume writing, it's meeting with career counseling through their first year. So they start right in building that resume and building their credentials so that they have that experience well at Randolph-Macon, and it will help them build that experience for their future employment opportunities too. So if your student is eligible for federal work study, that will be part of the aid package. College work study does not show up as part of the aid package. So don't Don't worry if you don't see that. It doesn't show up, but they can still work on campus. So when do you hear? And I know Olivia talked about this briefly earlier. Scholarship notification comes at time of admission. So that's the great news. It's in there, and it is exciting to see that. And then what happens next is we will work on a comprehensive aid package. And right now, for students that have been admitted and have their scholarship offers, we're reviewing FAFSAs right now. We're in the process of starting to look at those financial aid packages. And for students who have an offer of admission, we're actually hoping to get those out mid to late February, and they'll load right out through the admission portal, same place where you see your admission information. So that scholarship notification and your acceptance information, all of the financial aid information will be loaded right there. You'll see our letter. It will have our costs on it. It will show you the direct costs, our estimated costs, everything that you need to make your best informed decision. So you'll get notified when your letter is out there, and you can go out and take a look at that. And then what we're going to touch on next is special circumstances. And I know I mentioned this earlier. This has been a year, I mean, not only as a financial aid administrator, just for all of us, that has just been beyond challenging. And then you throw college on top of it, and finances on top of it. I found that it's incredibly challenging for families. And what we want to make sure is that we're looking at the most up-to-date information. As you know, we've talked about FAFSA being based on 2019 income. Well, a lot has changed in 2 years. And what we all know is that what our incomes were 2 years ago may no longer be what our incomes are today. There's been significant job loss. There's been significant changes to unemployment. And so I want to make sure and reinforce for families that if your family's 2019 information is very different from what it is today, we should have a conversation. We should talk about what that means for financial aid, because we do have the ability to look at a more recent year's income. We do have a form for it. I will warn you that ahead of time. Financial aid officers, we love our forms. It's due to our auditing nature, so don't be surprised when you get that from us. But things that we can look at is a long-term loss of employment, business challenges, medical expenses, changes in marital status. As long as we can document them, we need to look at those. And so we can work with you through that process, so that if 19 isn't a great reflection of income, we can look at 20 or perhaps even 21 in some cases income. So those are conversations you'll want to have with either myself or one of my colleagues. The challenge to special circumstances is there are things that we absolutely can't look at. And as much as they are hardships for any family, we just can't adjust a financial aid package for them. So I do throw out consumer debt, liquidating assets, and cash flow problems, all special circumstances. Unfortunately, they just don't change an aid package. So if you think about your income situation, and if you feel that 2019 doesn't reflect where you're at today, you can look at our reevaluation form. It's just a 2-page form. It's going to walk you step by step through so that we can look at 19 income and compare it to 20 income and perhaps 21 income. And then we will ask for supporting materials, of course, but we can help you navigate that process. So don't be shy. And I absolutely don't want families to feel nervous or in any way embarrassed about talking about their special circumstances. These are important life changes that we need to make sure that we're looking at for our families. So next steps. And I just have to say, I always put my son up here, and this is my son, because I want to make sure that everybody understands I do this every day for a living. He knows that, and I'm sure there's times when he's tired of me asking him to talk to his financial aid office. But aid process is collaborative, and we need to work together as parents with our students. Yes, I could just call his school. I do happen to know his the financial aid director at his school. but she doesn't know I have a son there yet. She hasn't figured that out yet. And it's been a couple years. So, and that's a good thing. So I want him to be responsible for the primary role of his financial aid, but understand that I'm there in the background supporting and cheering him on and making sure that, we're meeting our deadlines and that we're not missing opportunities, and that, scholarship requirements. Does he have his grades? Is he at full-time enrollment? I want to make sure he's checking his email. I mean, it's on him to check his email because we notify the student first. But in the background, I'm like, hey, have you gotten anything from your aid office? Just to make sure, and just to be collaborative, ask questions and make sure you're getting the most out of the process so that you don't have questions and you're not unsure of what the next steps might be. But yes, it's a collaborative process. There's days I'm sure he's tired of listening to me talk about it, but we need to work together to get it done because the goal in the end is graduation. So with that, I believe I've got Olivia's contact information up here. I've got mine. I have certainly talked a lot through this process. I'll just say for me, I am open. You want to email me, email the office, reach out to me, contact me, feel free. If you're on campus and you've scheduled a visit and you want to stop in to talk with myself or one of my colleagues, that's absolutely fine. I don't want you to be shy. I want you to get your questions answered and really feel comfortable with whatever decision you ultimately are making with your student. So, Olivia, I don't know if you want to add anything or if I missed anything that you want to add at this point, but please jump in.
I think you did a great job, Julie, and we're so grateful for your team for that openness you have for inviting families to have those conversations and thinking about the 4-year plan. I think that's incredibly important, and we encourage all families to do that. I will say for the immediate tomorrow, our campus is open and receiving visitors. So, it obviously changes day by day. So like Julie said, if you are comfortable coming to campus or having a conversation in person, you can do that. You can register for a visit on our website so that you can go through our COVID-19 procedures and make sure we get everything taken care of for your arrival. But we're also in the office able to answer questions over the phone or over email, also on Zoom. We're getting very Zoom friendly these days. So happy to engage with you in whatever platform works for you and your family. I know there's been some Q&A going on and some questions in the chat. So just want to ask Kellen and Susanna if there's any questions that they've seen that we might want to address together as a group.
Yes, thank you, Olivia. There are a few questions that I think would be very beneficial for us to just go over them aloud. The first of those being the interest rate that you mentioned, Julie, being 2.75 right now for unsubsidized loans. Will that change and fluctuate annually? Or for students entering the fall 2021, will it stay 2.75?
Yeah, so that's a great question and an important one when you're looking at loans. The interest rate is set and becomes effective July 1st of every year. So that current 2.75 interest rate is through June 30th of 2021. Now, I don't know if you've all looked at interest rates the way I've been watching them. I have not seen a significant change. I would be shocked if it changes significantly for the 21-22 year. And what happens is once your interest rate is set, it is set for the life of that loan, unless you consolidate and combine all your loans. But we will have a new interest rate effective July 1, and we typically know toward the end of May what that interest rate will be. But I would expect it would not change significantly.
Very helpful to know. We did get a few questions on VTAG. Would you mind going over the process of submitting that VTAG application and when that occurs?
Sure. So VTAG, I've spent a lot of time on TAG today. So TAG application for 21-22 is actually out on the state's website, on Chev's website. It's actually out on the Randolph-Macon website as well. And we like it in, and we have to have it in by July 31st. there has been changes to the application this year where Chev will actually accept an electronic signature. So there are steps that we've included with the application on our website, and it's also at Chev's website. So you complete the tag application. It's about a 3-page application, but when you complete it online, it forces you, it has great skip logic in it. So you have to answer all the questions. And then you can save it as a PDF as long as you've e-signed it. You can send it straight to our email, and then we can get it from you that way. You can fax it to us, you can mail it to us, any of those options, but it's out there and available, and it's pretty early for that application to be out there. So go ahead and get that completed and send that to us.
Thank you. Does EFC, estimated family contribution, include or exclude loans?
So the expected family contribution includes on a parent side what the Fed calculates in a formula, a parent's potential borrowing ability. And so does it include loans? Not necessarily, but it says, what it does say is it does include and take into perspective that your parent could potentially have the ability to borrow. So that's how I would answer that. If it's more on a specific financial aid package question, I think we should talk about that once we get the aid package done, so we can actually say, okay, here's what's included and what's not included, because I don't want to get into too much detail because every family situation is very different.
Along the lines of EFC, we do have another question. If you don't have an EFC and a parent is on disability?
So everybody has an expected family contribution. The contribution just could be 0. So for a family that's on either Social Security disability or just receiving disability payments that may be untaxed sources of income, depending on what the sources of that disability income, it may be required to be reported on a FAFSA, it may not be. But in the end, if the FAFSA due to disability or Social Security disability is all zeros, it means your expected family contribution is 0. So cost of attendance minus 0 equals the cost of attendance. And that's what we're going to be looking at when we're calculating an aid package. So you still have an expected family contribution, it just might be 0. Make sense?
Yeah. And what is the process for using the GI Bill?
GI Bill. So GI Bill has a few steps to it, but basically the student, actually the parent who is the beneficiary of the GI Bill, can designate their benefits to the student. So you get so the family would contact the VA and get a certificate of eligibility. Once you have that certificate of eligibility, you will send that to us, and it will tell us whether you're 100% eligible for GI, 80%, whatever your designation is based on your years of service and your service. And we will build that into your financial aid package. We have a certifying officer in the office of the registrar that we work quite closely with, who works with the VA and reports everything back to the VA. But for us, with the main driver and how we calculate everything is going to be based on that certificate of eligibility. If you're 100%, how many months of eligibility do you have? And that will translate into how many years of undergraduate eligibility. So everybody's got a few different months and different levels, different percentage levels. So the driver is going to be that certificate of eligibility.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Julie and Olivia, for going through that presentation. We understand that financial aid from the beginning of the process can seem like a really big task and can seem cumbersome, but when we really do break it down into these different levels and stages, you can conquer it, we promise you. And you have our financial aid office to rely on every step of the way. So please always feel free to reach out our financial aid office, to reach out to your admissions counselor. We are here to help navigate this process with you. We did record this evening's presentation, and I will be sending that out to all of you tomorrow afternoon in an email. So if you didn't get everything this evening, maybe we're taking notes, that's okay. You can go back and rewatch this presentation. So I do want to just thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday evening. Again, this is our second webinar of our January webinar series. We do have 2 more. Next week, we're talking all about academic life. We'll be giving a brief academic overview of academics at RMC, and then that will be followed by a mock class presentation by one of our professors in our psychology department. And then our last January webinar is focused on student life. So everything outside the classroom, extracurriculars, clubs, organizations, traditions, what really make our Yellow Jacket community so special. So be sure to tune in for those. You can register on our website, rmc.edu/visits, and you'll also see on our website ways to other programs to be involved in, and signing up for a campus tour if you would like to come to campus. I know that our student tour guides are eager to walk around prospective students. So we hope that we see more of you all this spring. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us, like I said. And I hope that all of you have a great rest of the evening. Bye now.